Yes, so we wish you a speedy recovery. Let's start.
We can
Uh,
start.
okay,
Good morning. I am Hardik Narayan Shukla, a second year student studying history and political science at Hindu College.
and I am Shreya Shukla, a second year student studying at Hindu College.
Caucus is the group discussion forum of Hindu College established in 2007. We regularly write on topics related to national, international, and social importance. We also host experts from different fields to understand the historical, political, and economic realities directly from the people who know best. To date, we have published 9 issues of our monthly magazine, The Probe, and we are elated to tell you, sir, that the probe will turn its 1 year this month.
And this interview will be a part of our special issue for the month of November. We are honored to interact with you, Mr. Anil Swarup, sir, today. Thank you so much, sir, for accepting our invitation. For the benefit of our viewers, Mr. Swarup is a retired IAS officer who has served in various capacities in his 38 years long career. Sir is the author of the book Ethical Dilemmas of a Civil Servant that answers questions that perhaps many services aspirants have. Sir has also served as the Coal Secretary of India. With the present coal crisis slowly cooling down after a seemingly panicky situation in several states, today's discussion will focus on arguably the most vital resource for India's power sector, that is coal, in an attempt to gain a better understanding of the problems associated and the reasons behind the crisis.
With this short introduction, sir, I would like to proceed with our first question. With this, while reading about the coal sector, I came across a significant fact, which is that in 2016 we had enough coal stocks, and we were thinking of exporting to Bangladesh. So, sir, what wrong happened in the next 3 years, which led to the present situation? Also, in your recent interview, you mentioned that being a coal secretary, you warned the government about the drastic situation which could occur in the next 5 years. So, was the complacency on the part of government a major factor? And why did the thermal power plants fail to uh, maintain the recommended stock of 14 days? Thank you, sir.
Let me give you a bit of a background about the coal sector for you to understand why we were so-called comfortable in 2016, and then explain to you what happened post 2016 for the crisis to occur. Now, India sits on a lot of coal. We have reserves of around 300 million tons. It's a huge amount of coal in the wake of our requirement of anywhere between 800 to 900 million tons. So we have reasonable amount of coal with us. But unfortunately, we have not been able to mine that coal for a variety of reasons. In 2014, there was a huge crisis consequent to the report of the then CAG, Mr. Vinod Rai, which created a lot of problems than solving the problems. And we ran into a serious crisis, similar and reminiscent of the crisis that we had recently, but much more profound, much more difficult to handle in 2014. Again, to cut a long story short, uh, on account of an excellent team that I had, we managed to tide over that crisis. And as you asked in your question, by 2016, we were comfortable enough to think in terms of exporting coal to Bangladesh. And after maybe about 35 to 40 power plants in serious crisis in 2014, in 2016, there was not a single power plant that was short of coal, and there was no criticality in that. Now, it's a separate matter. If those of you that want to understand can read my books, Ethical Dilemmas of a Civil Servant or Not Just a Civil Servant, which outline the details regarding the steps that were taken to tide over that crisis. Now, what happened thereafter? Why did the crisis recur? And my take is it might recur again because if fundamentals are not addressed, then the crisis will recur. Now, one of the primary reasons of this crisis, apart from the immediate reason of increase in international prices, untimely rains, and poor management of supply of coal These were immediate reasons, but fundamental reason was that Coal India production stagnated to 600 million tons for 3 years. For the past 3 years, it has stagnated around 598, 600, to around 600 million tons. Now, had this coal grown at the rate at which was growing in 2014, 15, and 15, 16, the coal production by Coal India would have been more than 750 million tons. It would have been really surplus on coal. But it didn't grow. So the question that you asked, the second one was, what happened after 2016 for coal not to grow at the rate at which it was growing earlier? The first reason was that after 2017, there was no regular chairman and managing director of Coal India for almost a year. Now, for an organization like Coal India not to be headed by anybody, and it was a temporary arrangement. So, in such organizations, temporary arrangements don't work because you have to do long-term planning. So, all the momentum that existed between 2014 and 16 was lost. The second reason was that I remember distinctly at around 2014, 15, and 16, the reserves with Coal India were around 35,000 crores of rupees. It's a huge reserves. And in view of the plan that we had, we wanted to do 1 billion tons by 2020. In order to have that production, we had planned opening of new mines or expansion of existing mines. Coal production can increase only by taking up new mines or expanding existing mines. There's no other way that you can increase coal production. So we planned that. Unfortunately, that plan was not executed, and most of the money of 35,000 crore was taken away by the government as dividend. So this money, instead of being invested there, was taken away as dividend. The third reason was associated with this, that instead of investing in mines, both in terms of expansion and new mines, the government thought it better to invest it in fertilizer plants. So, I had opposed it when I was as secretary there. I had opposed it, but I was overruled. And then when you are overruled, then it happens that way. The fourth reason was a very funny one. A large number of managers of coal mines, instead of engaging themselves in mining of coals and planning for future mining, they were asked to supervise toilets. In my book, Ethical Dilemmas of a Civil Servant, there is a chapter called Shit Happens. And it was then that I had forewarned that if you don't plan for the future, then you could run into a problem. Now, I don't blame them, those people who didn't agree with me, because I remember a meeting in 2016 in the Cabinet Secretariat, where I had suggested that there would be a crisis in future. Everyone laughed at me, said, you have so much coal, you don't know where to send. Coal India is sitting on, almost 100 million ton on their pit heads. What will you do with that coal? So I said, I'm not bothered about now. I'm bothered about 5 years down the line. Because if you don't plan now, if these managers don't indulge in planning for the future and spend their time on how to execute those plans, then you're going to run into problems 5 years down the line. It's unfortunate, but my prediction came true. Now, some people say that the crisis has got over. To me, that's not the issue. To me, if the coal production, because India imports almost 25% of its requirement, when India is sitting on so much coal. So my contention was, why are we importing coal? Now, import of coal consists of two parts. One is a
Is it my internet? Hardik, is it Sir's connection?
Yes, I think sir's connection is not stable.
Yes, yes. 1 second. अभी भी, yeah. Sir,
Yes,
you were not audible. Sir का ही connection था ना? Yes, yes, sir. Welcome back.
Can you hear me now? There was some power outage, so I'm on
Yeah,
my
yeah.
mobile hotspot. So what I was saying was Can I continue?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Please go
Okay.
ahead.
What I was saying was that there is a lot of coal which will still require to be imported because that quality of coal is not produced in India. But the remaining part of the coal, which can be sourced from within the country and is being imported, can be stored if the production increases. That we did in 2016, and it can be done now. I keep saying that whatever I am saying is not theoretical. And I'm also not saying that this should be done. I'm saying this has already been done once in the past, and it can be done again. That's my take on it.
Thank you so much, sir, for that answer. That was very elaborate. And as you mentioned that you had already uh, advised for such reforms, but they didn't took place. And also, you have regularly been pointing out that uh, there is no coordination between the center and state governments. And you have also mentioned that there was a CPMG which was made in 2015 interministerial committee, but it is not functional as of now. So means has the government or the stakeholders which are responsible for the current shortage of coal, have they learnt any lesson, means have they implemented some of the reforms as far as this crisis is concerned?
I am not aware because I'm not in touch with anybody who's doing it. But you touched upon a very important issue which I'd like to elaborate because that does not require a policy intervention.
Yes.
I don't know whether you are aware that all the coal exists in states which are governed by non-NDA governments. So whether it's West Bengal or Chhattisgarh or Jharkhand or Maharashtra and a little bit in MP, which is an NDA government, but most of the coal is in states where there are opposition ruled states. Now, my biggest concern today is this so-called war that is going on between center and states. There was, some sort of an unfriendly relationship even in 2014 and 16 between that period. But what we did was we handled it at bureaucratic level because as civil servants, we're not supposed to be aligned to any party. Our job is to do our job as professionals. So what I used to do was, and not many people are aware of this, that I didn't convene a single meeting in Delhi with state governments. No secretary does it. Almost every secretary calls meeting in Delhi because that's where you are the boss and you call everybody here. We didn't do that. I traveled to each state every 2 months to sit with the chief secretary, discuss with senior officers, with district collectors. The reason is very simple. Apart from coal existing in those states, the primary constraint in coal production relates to three major factors. Number one, availability of land. Number two, environment, and third is railway evacuation. Now, you can't acquire land in the states without cooperation of these states because land acquisition is done by the district collectors. So if you don't have them on board, your acquisition will not happen. If you look at the record production between 2014 and 16, in 2014-15, the production increased by 32 million tons, which was more than the cumulative increase over the previous 4 years. And over and above this, the production went by 44 million tons in 2015-16. Now, these numbers could not have been obtained without land, without environment and forest clearance. So, environment and forest clearance, the basic groundwork is done in the state governments. Now, if these two things don't happen in the states, how can coal production go up? My apprehension is that if this relationship is not improved, coal production will not increase. Coal production will increase. And I have been advocating that in my articles and otherwise. This war between center and state should stop. It is counterproductive. It is against national interest. Someone should have the sagacity to do it. Unfortunately, I don't see it happen because every day when I read things and when I see things, I find there is a greater one day one state government will fire a salvo, then the central government will fire a salvo, state government will arrest a central minister, the central government will arrest a state minister. What is this going on? I mean, we are a part of the same country. We can have difference of opinion, but there is a methodology of settling those difference of opinion. I mean, I say that because I was in it, in that chaos, and we managed to find a way forward. That is why I feel convinced way can be found forward, but someone will have to have a bada dil go ahead and talk to those people. It can be done. It should be done in the interest of this country.
Thank you so much, sir. Shreya?
Thank you, sir. That sounds like a vicious cycle of vengeance over and over. And it's not going anywhere. So, moving to the next question, sir. So, the plant load factor that you talked about, that there was a stagnation at 600 million tons. So, the plant load factor of our thermal plants has been consistently declining over the decade. So the production of coal India has stagnated at 600 million tons for the last 3 years. On the other hand, the demand has risen multifold. Like you said, sir, Coal India intended to achieve the goal of 1 billion million tons of production capacity by 2020, but now it has been pushed to 2025. So, sir, what changes would you have, had you still been the Coal Secretary of India? What structural and functional reforms would you want to be in place so that this process can be expedited?
Okay, we
Yes,
lost you
sir.
again. Yeah, so
Yes.
no, I heard your question.
Mhm.
If it's okay, I'll try and respond to it. Now, you raised two sets of issues. One relating to the PLF, the plant load factor. I'll come to that separately. And the other one you raised is to what are the steps that could be taken to ramp up the production of Coal India. I had partly answered this question while responding to your earlier query. To me, the critical part is the definition of roles between the central and the state government. What usually happens and typically happens is that the central government or the state government, they are piling on public sector undertakings. They create all the problems for public sector undertakings without helping them. So the watchword for me was not monitoring but facilitating. The question is the approach. People in the central government sometimes feel that they just write a strong letter to the public sector undertaking, suddenly things will improve. I mean, my experience, 38 years, tells me that if letters were to improve the performance of various organizations, we wouldn't be writing letters because all performance would have improved. That's the easiest thing to do: sit in a room and dictate out a letter and send it to somebody. It doesn't work that way. We have to understand the why of a problem. It's very, very important. Any problem, why is that problem? And then see what roles can be performed respectively by various stakeholders. In this case, let us try and understand the roles of central and the state government and the Coal India Limited. Now, to me, when we talk in terms of land acquisition, it is done by the state governments. Now, if Coal India is supposed to liaise with the state governments, it will be very difficult. For central government, it is much easier to talk to a state government and persuade them to acquire land. So the role of central government is extremely important in terms of acquisition of land. Similarly, in case of environment and forest clearance, it's the central government's role, because again, Coal India cannot persuade the state governments to fast track or process the applications of environment and forest clearance. And finally, the environment and forest clearance is given by the central government, not by the state government. The processing is done by the state government, but it's done by here again the central government has to play a role. I mean, you had mentioned about Coal Project Monitoring Group, CPNG. The idea of setting that group was that central government will help Coal India. Now, I'm using this word help, not monitor. Help Coal India in getting these clearances. We did that. We got clearances for more than 3,500 hectares of land of environment forest clearance. Now, writing letters to Coal India, what will my arrangement with Coal India, and that is the arrangement that should be with public sector undertakings, was that your job is to dig coal, to get coal out. As far as state government and central government agencies are concerned, I am there to help you. That was my arrangement at work. Same arrangement will be required to be done now, because merely monitoring and writing letters will not help in increase of coal production. We may believe that it will, but it will not. Once the roles are clearly defined, because I used to tell the chairman of Coal India that I'm not going to interfere in your work. You tell me if you have a problem, I'll try and solve the problem. Now, my approach was very simple. Why wouldn't a chairman Coal India not want to increase coal production? Everyone wants to do well. My monitoring is not going to help. If I ask him, can I help you? I mean, that is the whole attitudinal problem which some of us have. Some of us believe that unless you have a danda and you apply that danda, it won't work. These are not school kids, no. These are people who want to perform, who want to show their performance. If that be the case, then I should ask a different question. Instead of asking them, why aren't you producing so much coal? I will ask, can I help you to increase coal production? It makes a world of a difference. There is a basic attitudinal problem. I hear that secretaries to government of India keep writing letters. What is it achieving? I mean, I can say that from personal experience. I don't recall having written any such worded letter to Chairman Kolonde. Never. I used to pick up phone and ask him, "Yaar, batao kya karna hai? This is the problem. Let's sit down and sort it out." Now, instead of asking him to solve all the problem, my approach was, let's sit down and find a solution to the problem. It works. It works beautifully. I had a great relationship with Chairman Coal India and the coal production fund. I mean, if I have an adversarial relationship that you are not doing anything, why aren't you doing anything? Explain. Everyone loves that. I was asked by very senior people, यार तुम मॉनिटर नहीं करता. हमने कहा मॉनिटर करके क्या मिलेगा? आपको कोल चाहिए ना, हम कोल देंगे. आप कोल से मतलब है कि हम क्या करते हैं मुझ पे छोड़ दीजिए. We like to treat our colleague officers and our junior like school class children. We shouldn't be doing that. I mean, they are responsible people. If you treat them that way, I think my experience tells me, and everywhere, if you read my 2 books, there are many examples. It's not that I succeeded everywhere. I did fail, but I was committed to adopting an approach which is to help people around rather than monitor people around.
Yes, sir. So that is a life lesson that we shouldn't focus on the problem, but on the solution. Like what can we do to make the change?
No, we should focus on the problem to understand the why of a problem. This is very important. I mean, many of you would be wanting to get into civil service. Now, until you understand that what I need to do to get into civil service, what are you going to do? You're going to tear your hair out, keep shouting at everyone, keep complaining. It doesn't work. You have to first find out why am I unable to qualify? Suppose if you don't, I did that. In the first year I qualified for the police service. I analyzed why didn't I qualify for the IS, and then I worked towards it religiously. I may or may not succeed. It's but the point is whether I'm moving in the right direction. That's the key. To me, the whole approach towards monitoring, writing letters, I mean, people may disagree. Some people may have succeeded that way. I would still believe it should be facilitation rather than monitoring.
Thank you, sir. You can go ahead with your next question, Hardeep.
Yes, sir. We know that no matter how much we ignore coal, but 70% of our electricity generation uh, utilizes coal, and 80% of this coal is obtained through Coal India Limited. So this means that Coal India Limited has a monopoly in the coal sector. So, sir, being an insider, we would like to you to shed some light on Coal India Limited as an institution, and as you mentioned that there are various structural and functional problems, as you answered in your previous 2 answers, uh, which Coal India Limited is facing. So, which of these problems exacerbated the present crisis?
See, Coal India is not a perfect institution. It has its problems. But it has absolutely fabulous officers who are committed to improving coal production. But as I said, there are problems in Coal India. For example, they have to upgrade technology because technology of excavation of coal is changing by the day. So they have to upgrade that technology. They should do it. Then they should close down such mines which are uneconomic in nature. There are certain mines where the cost of production is so much that there's no reason for continuing with those mines. So they should close those mines and open more economic mines for them to become more viable. Similarly, their structure, what they do is when they acquire land, they provide employment to the owner of the land, which is very good thing. Not many people know about it, and that's why they are able to acquire more land than others. So they provide employment. Now, whether those people who are employed are trained appropriately, adjusted appropriately, so on and so forth. There are a number of issues with Coal India. But my contention is, as I keep saying, there's no organization that is perfect. There's no organization. They can learn from each other. That is one way of looking at Coal India. The other aspect of Coal India is that Government of India also has an important role in the context of Coal India. I had mentioned to you about Chairman Coal India not being there for 1 year. Now, who selects this Chairman Coal India? Who appoints this Chairman Coal India? Government of India. Now, how can Coal India be held responsible for not having a chairman? If the responsibility rests, not only that, the directors to the company are appointed by Government of India. Even today, two subsidiaries of Coal India do not have chairman. So there is a role that has to be played by Government of India. So instead of asking Coal India to do this, that, and the other, the central government should do its work, provide that personnel that is to be provided to them. Then central government dictates a number of decisions. You should do this, you should do that. There has to be thought about it. You can't keep directing Coal India for everything and then hold them responsible. I mean, either you give them that freedom to work and then hold them responsible, or you take the responsibility if you're taking wrong decisions. So there are roles to be performed by central government and Coal India. As I keep saying, Coal India is not a perfect institution, but it has enormous potential. I've seen that. I've seen that potential realize. There are young officers who want to do things. So we have to encourage them. The question is whether we are encouraging them or only writing letters. So these roles have to be performed. Secondly, in order to increase coal production, I have always felt that Coal India, monopoly may not be the right phrase, but I think they had a predominant players in coal so far. I have always been on view, in view of the demand of the coal in India, we should promote commercial mining, meaning thereby bringing in competition with Coal India. Why not? I said that in 2015, and fortunately the Prime Minister also agreed, but somehow at some level, between me and the Prime Minister, it happens in government. And it got released only 5 years down the line. And in 2020, the government took a decision to open up to commercial mining. Commercial mining will help increase in production. To me, it will also help Coal India in terms of engaging with people who have better technology and learning from them and improving their own technology. Because, as I keep saying, technology is a very key factor in improving efficiency. And that can happen if there is competition right now. Coal India does not have any competition, or virtually no competition at this point in time.
Right, sir. That was very well said, and central government should really look into this. And sir, this question I wanted to ask this later, but as you mentioned it now, that you support the idea of commercial mining, and you feel that commercial mines can help increase production. So I wanted to means you have clearly given your assent to privatization in coal sector, but
No. Please try and understand. I'm sorry for stopping you here.
yes,
Understand the difference between privatization and private sector participation. If you don't understand that, everyone gets confused. I'm not even commenting on privatization. I'm talking of increased competition. I'm talking of getting private sector into excavation. Privatization would mean that you privatize Coal India. Now, this is a separate issue altogether. That's not an issue being discussed at this point in time. We were discussing whether commercial mining, meaning that whether we should allow additional players to come and mine. We don't understand the difference between nationalization, privatization. We use this interchangeably. There's a difference. So I'm not talking of privatization. I'm talking of getting additional players to start mining for commercial purpose. I don't know whether you're aware, at this point in time, there are private players who are mining, but their mining is captive in the sense they can't sell it in the open market. Commercial mining is they will be able to mine, they can either sell it or use it. So that's the difference. And I have been advocating that because I do feel that India requires more coal. And if you require more coal, how is it going to come? Coal India, we've shackled them. हाथ बांध दिए, पैर बांध दिए, तो कैसे वो बढ़ेगा?
yes,
So get commercial people and get them to mine and get more production going.
yes, sir. I think that the government did took this up, and it has amended the amended the act in 2020 and allowed more private players to come in. But we then find that there is a decrease in their production also, that they were producing uh, in the earlier year they produced 128 million ton coal, and then in the next year they produced 120, so there is a decline in that. So
Hardik.
yes, sir.
Again, don't confuse between commercial mining and existing mining by private players. Commercial mining has not started in this country as yet. The production that you're talking of is not commercial mining. It is mining by those who are using it for captive purpose. Commercial mining decision was taken in 2020. My understanding is the first commercial mining will not happen before next 3-4 years. Because that is the time that you take to start mining. Mining doesn't happen that I take a decision here and tomorrow mining starts. So the numbers that we are giving of 120 is the reduction in the production by the captive mine owners. So that's a different issue altogether. We must try and understand why hasn't captive mining increased at the level as it was envisaged. I mean, it was also envisaged to go to about 300-400 million tons. Why has it happened? That's another chapter. Why? Let me explain this to you. You know, as I said, mining is not simple and easy. It requires land acquisition. It requires environmental forest clearance. It requires evacuation of. These are the three primary problems. Now, we haven't really addressed these problems for the private sector. The CPMG, the Coal Project Monitoring Group, was set up to facilitate this. Now, if you don't, like Coal India finds it difficult to find mines. If Coal India production is stagnating, when it's a government concern, the private sector will have greater problems engaging with the state governments and environment forest clearance. So, both the center and the state government will have to become facilitators in helping these people. Now, if despite this help, they don't mine, then action can be taken against them because they are mandated to mine something. So it's both ways. First, the government should help, and secondly, if despite that help, private sector is not mining, the mine should be taken away and they should be penalized. Now we are neither helping them nor penalizing them. So the production is stagnating or coming down. So this is as far as captive mines are concerned. The commercial mines also will face a similar problem in case they are not helped to start mining. So it's not that you give a mine and it's their own. No, it doesn't work that way. Because their association with the government in the context of getting various clearances continues. And that is where the government will have to play a very important role.
Thank you so much, sir. I think that this has cleared out my distinction, and I can now distinguish between privatization, commercial mining, and captive mines. So that distinction I have figured it out. Thank you so much, sir. And sorry for confusing between these. And
No, it's not only you. Even those in the coal sector get confused. I have these trade unions that used to come to meet me. So they were saying that, how are you privatizing Coal India? I said, who's privatizing Coal India? Is it being privatized? I used to ask them this question. Explain to me how they said they're selling 5% share. I said the controlling share will be with the government. So what is privatization? They are disinvesting. So we must understand the difference between disinvestment, partial disinvestment, and privatization. Privatization would mean that the controlling shares go to the hands of private people and they control the organization. But if the central government sells its shares, then it's disinvestment, it's not privatization. So these are terms that we'll have to use very carefully because they have a different meaning altogether.
Shreya, you can ask your next question.
Yes, sir. So my question is related to what you said a few minutes ago, that there are a lot of vacancies within Coal India, that important positions, even the chairman positions are vacant. And this can be said about a lot of positions in government jobs in general, sir. People are retiring, but the position is not getting filled. So why do you think there is this failure on the part of the government to fill these positions?
This is a problem with almost all over the world. It's not that vacancies don't exist, it's nothing new. But there are certain critical positions that cannot be allowed to be kept vacant. And there's no reason why they should be kept vacant. Because when a person joins the service, on the date of joining, his date of birth, and hence the day he will retire. So if I know a person is going to retire 1 year, 1.5 years down the line, then why can't we initiate action in advance to ensure that he's replaced? I'll give you an example. When I was Secretary to Coal in 2016, Sudhir Bhattacharya was then the chairman of Coal India. I had moved a file 1 year before to suggest either he should be granted an extension, which I proposed, or if that is not possible, let us get an alternative person in readiness. No action taken after I left. Hence, once Sudhir Bhattacharya retired, there was nobody available, so temporary arrangements were being made for 3 months each. So you can and you should, because retirement date is known, and when that is known, you can do the advance work. Why can't you do advance work? But Many of us don't.
Yes, sir, and we can't even and there's nothing we can do about it.
No,
It can be
as common man,
yes, sir.
I'm talking about what you and I can do. I tweet a lot. If there's a vacancy, I tweet it. Let it be heard somewhere. I'm glad to say in some cases they heard it and they went ahead and did it. But we have to make, in democracy, that's the advantage. Make sufficiently well-tuned noise for the powers that be to listen. Sometimes they listen, other times they will not listen. It's karmanyavadikara. You've done your job. You raise that noise. But we don't normally do that. I'll tell you why. I mean, now I'm digressing a bit. Even youngsters, they say, "यार मुझसे क्या मतलब?"
No.
How am I concerned? हमें तो यार खाना मिल रहा है, बिजली आ रही है, पानी आ रहा है, घर पे बढ़िया, सब चल रहा है बढ़िया, चिंता नहीं करते. And that is why we suffer. Because, again, at the cost of digression, so long as I feel that I am not hit, I am living in my comfort zone. In fact, yesterday I tweeted this. There was a tweet. I tweet every day what Chanakya didn't say. And one of the tweets was, most of us live in our comfort zones and expect somebody else to do the dirty job. If that be the case, it won't be long before I will be hit. And then there will be nobody left to do that dirty job. So as youngsters, if you feel strongly about an issue, there are ways in which you can raise your voice. Not as a revolutionary, but sometimes to wake up the man who's sleeping. There's no harm in doing that.
Yes, sir. So, this was one of the reasons we wish to interact with people like you, sir. We learn a lot every time. And, sir, when you say that, we don't think, we actually do, sir. And it's just that you tell us the right path, that you should make the noise. And how do we make the noise? We talk to you and we talk to the other people who are in positions of power. And we in a way, establish the bridge of communication there. Yes, sir. Hardik, next question.
Yes, sir. Moving on to the next question. Sir, I would like to focus on the power sector. So, in the power sector, we can say that there has been a huge default in payments, uh, both by the generating companies, as we call them Gencos, and the discoms, distributing companies. So, the central government has frequently issued several bailout packages for the discoms, and the Uday scheme of 2015 was aimed at reviving the discom sector, because it is the most means as far as I have read, I can see that it is not most worst performing, in my opinion. So, why do you think that this payment chain crisis happened, and how can it be resolved? Thank you, sir.
I'm glad you raised this issue because we all discuss coal, but the real problem is power sector. Coal is a problem that can be sorted out easily, but power sector problem is much more complex and difficult. And hence we keep pushing it under the carpet. And every time we push it under the carpet, it comes out as a bigger devil and it's creating a greater. To me, if power sector crisis is not handled appropriately, it could lead to a serious economic crisis. And let me explain this to you. How it is and then how it could possibly be sorted out. Both things. Number one, the existing status, as you rightly pointed out, the problem is with distribution companies because they are working on an uneconomic formula. They buy electricity at a higher rate and sell it at a cheaper rate. If that is the case, they're never going to make money. So how that can be corrected, I'll come to that later on. But I'm just trying to tell you what is the problem, and then I'll discuss the why of it. Now, since discom companies are unable to earn the money that they should earn, they are unable to pay to the generating companies. If my information is correct, this is based on the Power Finance Corporation data that they release out periodically. On the 31st of March 2021, the discoms owed more than 2 lakh crores to the generating companies. Earlier, I thought the number was 50,000 crores, which I had been using in my article, but I recently saw a statement. It may be different a bit here and there, but it's a huge amount. And these discoms in turn owe around 20,000 crores to Coal India for coal payments. Now today, Coal India, which was cash surplus 35,000, I am told some of the subsidiaries have had to take loan from the bank to pay salaries to their employees. So though they are showing profit, since you are a student of economics, no, you aren't. But you will understand this, that they may make profit, but they are not cash rich. The cash flow has stopped. So 20,000 crore is shown as a receivable in Coal India, but the money is not there. Since money is not there, how do you spend? So in your records, it will appear as profit, but the money is not available.
Yes.
Now, the real crisis will come in case of discoms, which are running into problems in any case for a variety of reasons. Now, if they don't get paid, where does the money for them come? They're taking loan from the banks. And if these loans become NPAs, then the banks will run into problems. So there is a much greater crisis beckoning us if we don't address those issues. Now let us understand the genesis of the problem is discoms. I mean, there are minor problems with generating companies and Coal India, but major problems with discoms. And as you rightly put it, Uday provided that opportunity to correct it. And Uday was based on what had happened in Gujarat. You know, people talk about Gujarat model. To me, perhaps one of the foremost models from Gujarat should have been the power sector. I distinctly recall in one or two meetings with the Prime Minister and other ministers, I mentioned to him, "Sir, जो आपने गुजरात में किया वही करना है और states." And obviously he agreed. But it didn't happen. Why didn't it happen? It didn't happen because the approach that was adopted. Approach was convene a meeting in Delhi, have a discussion here, and then people go and God bless you. I had written, and I have a copy of that note which I had sent to the minister then, that these meetings should be held in the state governments. In fact, for Rajasthan, it should be held in Gandhinagar, where the officers of Rajasthan government should sit with the officers of Gujarat government to understand how did they make it happen in Gujarat. And then it's easy to replicate. You know, there are many ज्ञानी पुरुष in this country. बहुत ज्ञान बांटते हैं. जिन्होंने कुछ किया या नहीं होगा, ज्ञान बांटते हैं. I have always believed that Gyan should come out of practice, because then you will be able to demonstrate that what I am telling you is not only possible, it has happened. Since it has happened, it can happen again. That's what I did throughout my career. Find a model where it has worked and then demonstrate to others that I am not giving you Gyan, that this is how it should be done. It has happened. Now, Rajasthan and Gujarat have similar terrains. They are joining states. So if it can happen in Gujarat, we should try and understand why is it happening in Rajasthan. Now I can't go into the details of Uday. Uday had components like, you know, smart metering, separate feeders for rural, for commercial, because that way you will be able to account where the loss is happening. This is not to say that nothing happened under Uday, but the point is the logical conclusion didn't happen. It was left halfway, and it was on occasions found politically inconvenient to enforce what was expected of them under Uday. So to me, Uday का उदय तो हुआ ही नहीं. अब उदय का उदय हो जाता तो power sector ठीक हो जाता. The problem is the manner in which Uday was implemented. It's a brilliant scheme, very well thought of scheme. It contains all the factors that are essential for reviving the power sector, for reviving the discoms. But if you don't implement it, because in India, there is a huge problem in terms of ideas being there and not being implemented. And let me digress a bit. You know, it's very easy to have an idea in this country. Everyone has an idea. आपसे मैं पूछूं क्या करेंगे, आप बता देंगे ये करेंगे. आपसे मैं पूछूंगा, आप भी बता दीजिएगा कि ये करना है. But for an idea to fructify, and listen to this very carefully, in a country like ours, which is a democracy, and fortunately a democracy, at least still a democracy, I don't know how long it will last, but it's still a democracy. It has to be politically acceptable, socially desirable, technologically feasible, financially viable, administratively doable, judicially tenable, and emotionally relatable. These are 7 dimensions. Now, I'm not going to elaborate because it will require another hour for me to explain. Now, Uday was a great idea, but the problem here is in implementing that idea. Like, you know, all of us know that there's no problem in getting a policy going. If I don't have a clear-cut action plan outlining what needs to be done, how it will be done, who will do it, it will just remain an idea. And we'll have great academic discussions with people, yaar, ye hona chahiye, ye hona chahiye. Everyone will talk of kya hona chahiye. Arey bhai, ho kyun nahi raha ye to jano. Until you understand the why of it not happening, you'll never be able to solve it. Uday faced that problem because there was a solution available and a solution that worked in Gujarat. But unfortunately, at the implementation level, we didn't indulge ourselves in such intensive discussions as were imperative for implementing a good policy like Uday.
Sir, to follow that up, I would like to ask a related question. Sir, do you think the problem with discoms has something to do with these tall promises that politicians make, that we will give you cheaper electricity and even sometimes we'll give it to you free of cost, as if it is produced out of thin air and for no cost? Sir, what impact does this have, trickle down into the coal sector?
This is something which is not understood by the common man because it's a bit complicated. When any government announces free electricity, it is not at the cost of discoms. Government makes a budgetary provision to give that money to discoms. Because without that, it won't work. Under the existing dispensation, if the government decides to give free electricity to any constituency, then that money is budgeted and given to discoms. At least on paper, it works that way. So discoms should not be making a loss. State governments may not transfer that money for a variety of reasons, as some of the states are doing. But technically speaking, that is not lost to the discoms. In fact, it's a profit in the sense that they get the entire amount which they would not recover if they were to give the electricity. So that money comes to them. Though in the long run, even that is harmful. It will impact the state government, its finances. There are many other implications of it. But as far as discoms are concerned, giving free electricity to somebody is not a burden on discoms.
Yes.
The real problem is that with the discoms is the what they call the AT&T losses, the transmission and distribution losses, because these losses, hide the chori or the theft that happens in power sector. The primary problem is that, and second, of course, the costing of it. At what price they are getting the power, and at what price they are selling the power. So pricing is also a factor. But free power is politically, they want it politically. Economically, it is disastrous because anything free is not valued. But as I said, if you want to take away that, it has to be politically desirable and it becomes difficult. More and more states are competing with each other to give free power. I don't know what is the economics of it. But discoms are not impacted by that. It is wrong. Discoms have serious problems, but this is not a problem.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions, Hardik?
Yes, sir, I would like to talk about what our Prime Minister promised at COP26. He said that our Honorable Prime Minister said that uh, till 2030 we will switch to renewable, we will produce half of our power from renewable sources. So taking means given this fact that 70% of electricity is now produced from coal, and within 10 years, and given this crisis, can we expect that this goal can be realized?
See, I have a lot of regard for the Honorable Prime Minister. I have worked with him. I'm not sure whether I have a similar regard for his promises. So you look at the promises that have been made in the past 7 years and see how many promises have been fulfilled to a constituency that is going to vote for him. No international constituency is going to vote for him. So you can say anything there and get away with it. I have serious doubts about what he said. Because on the basis of what he said earlier, he's a very fine person, very committed person, but he believes in a lot of talking. Walking is a different cup of tea. I'm sure there will be efforts made, but I don't think India will be able to produce 50% of non-conventional energy. And even if they do that by then, the consumption would still be of thermal. I don't know whether you're aware that renewable energy, the PLF of renewable energy is 20%.
Yes.
Meaning thereby that it is only when sun is shining that you can produce solar energy. And our requirement of energy is in the evening. So unless you have these storage issues sorted out, what will you do with that energy during the day? During the day, then you'll push the thermal plants to back down their production and cause greater harm to them. Because when you back down production, You have your capital cost incurred. You're not getting any remuneration because you're not producing electricity that is taken up by solar energy. So it's a much more complex issue than merely making an announcement that we'll do 50% by 2030. We announced 1 billion ton of coal production, and everyone announced by 2020 what has happened. I can go on and on, one after the other. We announced that manufacturing sector, as a consequence of Make in India, will grow at 13 to 14%. It has actually grown between 2 and 3% before COVID arrived. We had announced that we'll create employment for so many people. We face the worst ever employment crisis today. Not because of COVID, it is all pre-COVID. COVID is a bahana that we got now. So let us not go by the announcements part. It's nice to make an announcement, it's a political announcement. I take it with a pot full of salt. I don't think it is even meant to be understood. It is meant to be announced so that you can discuss it, to get headlines in newspapers. No one will look at those headlines that were there 5 years ago or 3 years ago and check whether those announcements that were made there. I would suggest that you all should do a research on it. Since you are a student of political science, do a research on the announcements made and come out with a paper. I know it may be difficult for you to speak on those fronts, but come out with a paper that these were the announcements made. After that, put a question mark. Will COP26 announcement will be fulfilled? Period. Your job will be done. Do a research of announcements.
Yes.
Not only the central government, also the state governments. I think as students, you should be aware and you should make people aware of the futility of making these announcements. When I was a part of the government, I used to tell my minister, sir, आप ये announce क्यों करते हैं? आप करिए ना. You do it. Why do you announce? You walk and then talk. Why do you want to talk and you may not walk? I remember a press conference going on, and when the minister was waxing eloquent about power sector, just suddenly the power went off. In that, and then one journalist asked him, "Sir, ये क्या हुआ?" अरे भाई, वो तो state government उनकी है, इसलिए हमें नहीं पता कैसे चलेगी. How can you do that? We as citizens of this country should start asking questions about such announcements. Since we don't ask such questions, such announcements continue to be made. The moment an announcement is made, whether it's COP26, you must list out 10 announcements where announcements were made and nothing happened. And I can go on and on. I gave you look at GDP growth. The GDP growth, for the first time in the history of this, not history of this country, for the first time in decades, the GDP growth rate has been coming down for 5 years before COVID arrived.
Yes.
And we make announcements. We'll do this, we'll do that. My contention is very simple. If I'm a part of the government, who stops me from doing what I'm announcing? So why do you announce? Let people feel it. कि मैंने बोला था ये हो गया, या मैंने बोला ही नहीं था ये हो गया, तब हम कहे हमने देखो क्या कर दिया. हम पहले अनाउंस कर देंगे. Another reason is we love announcements. For you to lull into not asking question, I'll make another announcement which is sexier than the previous one. So you don't even think about the previous announcement. You say, अरे COP26 में announce कर दिया, अब उस पर discussion होता है. COP 2030 में COP, आप इनको देखो COP 21, 22, 23 में क्या announce किया था और क्या है. Just look at that. We don't even ask those questions. We are lulled or intoxicated by the fireworks of the new announcements, so we don't even question the past announcement. We should. It's high time we did. As youngsters, you should. You should. The moment you say COP26, you say these 10 announcements. Make in India announcement was 12 to 14% manufacturing growth. The actual growth is 2 to 3%. Before COVID arrived, you look at Make in India announcements and then come out with a paper as to this was announced and this is what. I recently wrote an article for it, but no one is bothered because everyone is intoxicated by the fireworks that are going on of new announcements. Ask those questions. As youngsters, you should.
Beautiful.
Yes, sir. Yes. Sorry to interrupt you, Hardik. Sir, we'll take this up. Now that you've given us the idea, I think ideas are very important. Like you said, just ideas. We'll make it a point of today is 8th of November. We'll try to finish it before our exams in December, sir. 8th of December. We'll get back to you, sir. We'll walk the talk. Yes, go ahead, Hardik.
Yes, sir, beautifully said. And I was also about to say this only, that we'll definitely take this up. And so this has like this net zero and all whatever terminologies we use this is increasingly becoming a trend all over the world to means for we will do this by net zero by this we set targets. And as you rightly pointed out that the PLF of thermal power sector is the highest, and the given the uncertainties present in the renewable sources, we cannot we will not be able to produce the required amount of electricity or power with those sources. And as the former chairman of Coal India Parth Sathi Bhattacharya also pointed this out, that coal cannot be completely phased out in the foreseeable future at least. So with that, I would like to request Shreya to ask the last question of the day.
Yes, sir. My question was about the future of Coal India, but I think that has been answered. So I think so. You may be running late for your other events as well. With this, we come to the end of our interview with you, sir. We think you answered all our burning questions about India's coal today, and I'm sure our readers would find this discussion to be highly informative and interesting, even apart from everything that you had to say about for functioning of the governance in government in general. I, on behalf of the Probe, Caucus, and Hindu College University of Delhi, thank you for sharing your knowledge and being with us here today, sir. We also extend our heartfelt gratitude to our principal, ma'am, and college for providing us with this liberal space in the form of college societies to explore our interests and hone our skills. Thank you and have a nice day, sir. We hope you enjoyed this just as much as we did doing this
I,
today.
I,
Thank you,
I,
sir.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. Convey my regards to your principal. I had the occasion to visit your college 2 years ago and spent some time with her. Had a fantastic time with the young students then. Most of them would have passed out by now.
Yes,
But
sir.
I had a great time being there, and I enjoyed the session today as well. God bless you.
Thank you, sir. We hope that we get to see our college soon too.
Thank you so much, sir. We are honored to
Take care.
interact with you.
Take care. Take care. God bless you.
Have a nice day, sir.